If this war were actually slowing down, a missile would not have exploded in central Tel Aviv while the peace announcement was still fresh on people's screens. But that is exactly what happened. Donald Trump went before cameras and said the United States was having serious, productive conversations with Iran about ending the fighting. He projected confidence. He suggested momentum. He said there was a real chance this could stop. Then, the same day, Iran launched again. That collision piece language from Washington, impact crater in Tel Aviv, is the real story, because it tells you this conflict is no longer moving in one direction. It is running on two tracks at once, and before this is over, one of those tracks is going to destroy the other. Trump was not vague. He used the kind of language he uses. When he wants the world to believe a deal is close, he said there had been very good conversations. He spoke about a full resolution, not limited contacts. He said Iran had agreed it would not get a nuclear weapon. He even paused planned strikes on Iranian power infrastructure for 5 days, signaling that diplomacy had earned time. If that sounds substantial, it's because it was meant to, but Tehran did not echo any of it. Iran's parliament speaker publicly rejected the idea that talks with Washington were happening at all and called those reports false. The Revolutionary Guard called Trump deceitful. Publicly, the Iranian line was simple. No talks, no breakthrough, no reason to believe the war was about to end, and yet privately, the story was different. A senior Iranian foreign ministry official acknowledged to CBS that American proposals had been received through mediators and were under review. That is the first clue. The contradiction is not random. It is the system. Here's the second clue: the missile itself. The strike on Tel Aviv was not symbolic. A ballistic missile carrying roughly a 220-pound warhead got through and detonated in the center of the city. Windows blew out in nearby buildings. Smoke rose over one of the most heavily defended urban areas in the region. For people were injured. For civilians, the effect was immediate and psychological. One resident came out of a shelter and said he felt like a sitting duck. That line matters more than any official statement. Because even if Israel is degrading Iran's launch capacity, even if interception rates remain high overall, one successful hit in a major city changes the emotional math of a war. It tells the public that defense is no longer just about strength, it is also about scarcity, timing, and hard choices. When air defense networks start letting some threats through, that usually means they are being forced to prioritize. And once a system is making triage decisions, every incoming missile carries more strategic weight than before. So the real question is not whether messages are being passed. They are. The real question is this: who inside Iran can actually stop the firing? That is where the peace narrative begins to unravel. Iran is not operating as a single voice. The foreign ministry can review proposals, explore terms, and use mediators, but the Revolutionary Guard has its own operational logic, its own command channels, and in wartime, its own incentives. Earlier in the conflict, Iranian officials indicated that some strikes were being carried out under standing military orders and local command authority rather than through fresh political approval every time. If that is true, then the diplomatic channel and the missile campaign are not mutually exclusive. They can happen together. In fact, they can advance side by side. That is why the same government can deny talks in public, acknowledge messages in private, and still fire at Tel Aviv before the day is over. And then came the most revealing part of all. Reporting tied to the IRG said special plans had been prepared for Tel Aviv and regional U.S. allies with the stated purpose of removing any hope of negotiation from the minds of the aggressors. Think about that for a second. That is not battlefield language. That is anti-diplomatic language. It means part of the Iranian state was not just continuing military operations while diplomacy existed in the background. It was explicitly trying to sabotage the diplomatic track itself. So when people ask, were the talks real? They are asking the wrong question. The talks can be real and still be too weak to matter. You could see that instantly in the markets. When Trump made his announcement, oil dropped hard about 7%. Traders treated his comments as meaningful de-escalation. The S&P 500 jumped about 1%, its strongest day since the war began. That was the financial system voting, in real time, for the idea that the temperature might be coming down. Then the missile hit, then the denials came, then oil bounced back above $100. That reversal matters because markets are brutally unsentimental. They do not care about optimistic phrasing. They care about whether risk is actually leaving the system. For a few hours, traders priced in a path to stability. By the end of the day, they were pricing the war again. That leaves us with a very narrow opening, and it may be the last useful one for a while. The communication channel appears to be running through mediators, especially Oman, with Pakistan emerging as a possible venue for direct or near-direct talks. That makes strategic sense. Pakistan has working relations with both sides, borders Iran, and has the political standing to host sensitive talks without the symbolism becoming toxic. Reports suggest the United States is willing in principle to participate if Iran agrees, but in principle is one of the slipperiest phrases in diplomacy. It means the door is unlocked. It does not mean anyone has walked through it. Public denials from Tehran are also not proof that nothing is happening. In wars like this, governments often need plausible deniability just to keep a negotiating channel alive. No leadership wants to look like it is bargaining under fire, especially not after weeks of strikes and domestic pressure, so the public posture stays hard. While the private channel keeps moving, that model has history behind it. It has worked before. The problem is that secret diplomacy only matters if it can eventually discipline the battlefield. Right now, the battlefield is not disciplined. It is still speaking louder, and that has bigger consequences than one headline cycle. If the military wing inside Iran can keep attacking while diplomats quietly explore terms, then every peace signal becomes fragile by definition. For Israel, that means public confidence erodes even if the broader campaign is tactically successful. For the region, it means every rumor of de-escalation is shadowed by the risk of immediate reversal. For global markets, it means oil, shipping, and risk assets remain hostage to a war that can appear to calm in the morning and reprice. The world by afternoon, Trump's 5-day pause is therefore not a gesture. It is a test. Can the mediators turn exchanged messages into actual restraint before that window closes? Can Iran's political channel overrule its military channel? Can diplomacy become stronger than the logic of retaliation? Those are the only questions that matter now, because on one side, there are proposals, mediators, and a possible path to talks. On the other, there are missiles, air defense strain, and civilians in shelters feeling exposed. Both realities are true at the same time, but they cannot remain equally true for long. This war is now being fought in 3 places at once, behind closed doors, over city skylines, and inside the price of oil, and at this moment, the missiles are still winning the argument.